A terrified boy bursts into a police station, clutching a baby in his arms. His voice shakes as he screams, "Arrest my mom." What dark secret is he running from? Stay tuned to uncover a chilling story of survival, betrayal, and an unexpected twist that changes everything. The cold Chicago wind cut through the night like a blade, but 12-year-old Lucas Wendeley didn't stop running. His bare feet pounded against the cracked pavement, his arms wrapped tightly around the tiny, squirming bundle in his grasp. His heart hammered so hard it drowned out the sounds of the city, car horns, distant sirens, the occasional voice shouting from a nearby alley. All he could hear was the frantic beat of his own pulse and the soft, muffled cries of the baby pressed against his chest. Lucas had no plan, no idea where he was going. He only knew one thing: he had to get away. Away from the house. Away from her. Away from the terrible thing she had done. His breath came in ragged gasps as he turned a corner, his eyes darting wildly for a place of safety. And then, like an answer to his desperate, unspoken prayer, he saw it. The police station. A squat, gray building with harsh fluorescent lights glowing behind its large glass windows. Two uniformed officers stood outside, drinking coffee and laughing about something. Lucas didn't hesitate. He stumbled forward, his legs burning from exhaustion, his vision swimming from panic. He barely registered the startled expressions on the officers' faces as he pushed through the doors and into the station. The room was bright, too bright, and the sharp scent of coffee and old paper filled his nose. Several people turned to look as he burst inside, but Lucas didn't care. He sucked in a deep breath and screamed with everything he had left in him. "Arrest my mom." The words echoed through the station, cutting through the quiet hum of police chatter and the scratch of pens on paperwork. For a moment, there was only silence. And then, chaos. A female officer rushed toward him, kneeling to his level. Hey, slow down, kid. What's going on?" Lucas shook his head, still gripping the baby in his arms. His whole body was trembling now. She took her. She stole her. And his voice cracked, his breath hitching. She killed someone. I saw it. I saw everything. More officers crowded around him, their expressions shifting from confusion to concern. A tall man in plain clothes stepped forward, his piercing blue eyes locking onto Lucas's. He wasn't wearing a uniform, but something about him made Lucas think he was in charge. The man crouched down, his voice calm, steady. "What's your name, son?" "Lucas." "Okay, Lucas. You're safe now. Can you tell me what happened?" Lucas gulped, looking down at the tiny baby in his arms. Her little fists curled against his hoodie, her face flushed from crying. He had to protect her. He had to make them believe him. Taking a shaky breath, he lifted his eyes to meet the man's. "My mom took this baby," he whispered. "And she murdered her father." Detective Jonathan Crow had seen a lot in his 20 years on the force, but there was something about the boy standing in front of him that made his stomach twist. Lucas Wendeley looked small, too small to be carrying such a heavy truth. His dark eyes were wide with fear, his face pale and gaunt under the harsh fluorescent lights of the police station. And then there was the baby, tiny, helpless, wrapped in a thin blanket, her soft cries barely audible over the ringing silence that had settled in the room. Crow slowly straightened, glancing at the officers around him. They were all waiting, watching, their usual skepticism battling with the undeniable weight of the moment. He turned back to Lucas. "Okay, kid," he said, keeping his voice calm. "Let's take this one step at a time. You said your mom took this baby. And, you saw her kill someone?" Lucas nodded, his fingers tightening around the baby's blanket as if she might disappear if he let go. "Yeah," he whispered. "It was a man. I think he was her dad." Crow exchanged a look with Officer Ramirez, who had been quietly taking notes. She raised an eyebrow, silently asking if he thought the kid was telling the truth. Crow didn't answer. Instead, he crouched back down to Lucas's eye level. "All right, Lucas. I need you to start from the beginning. Tell me everything you saw." Lucas swallowed hard. His hands trembled as he adjusted his grip on the baby. His voice was hoarse, but steady. "It was 3 nights ago," he said. "I was in my room, trying to sleep. I heard voices downstairs. A man was yelling at my mom. He sounded scared. Desperate. He kept saying something about taking the baby back. About how this wasn't right." Crow nodded, urging him to continue. "I got up to see what was happening. I hid behind the staircase, so they didn't see me." Lucas's voice dropped lower. The man was crying. He was begging her to give him his daughter. "But my mom, she just smiled at him. Like she thought it was funny." His breathing hitched, his small chest rising and falling too fast. Crow gave him a moment, waiting until he was ready to go on. "And then?" Lucas squeezed his eyes shut. "Then she shot him." The room felt like it had stopped breathing. "She pulled a gun from behind her back and shot him. Just like that. He fell, and there was so much blood. I almost screamed, but I covered my mouth. I didn't want her to hear me." A lump formed in Crow's throat. He had seen murder before, but the way Lucas told the story, the way his voice cracked like glass, it was different. What happened next? Lucas licked his lips. "She just stood there for a while. Then she picked up the baby, Lily. She was crying so loud. Mom rocked her in her arms and told her, 'It's okay, baby girl. You're mine now. You'll forget him soon enough.'" A shiver ran down Crow's spine. He had known dangerous people, but this? This was something else. "Where is she now?" he asked. Lucas shook his head. "I don't know. She was acting strange the last few days. Kept saying we might have to move again. That people were asking too many questions." Crow stood up, his mind already racing. If what the boy was saying was true, then they had a missing woman with a stolen baby, and a dead father whose body had yet to be found. "Ramirez," he said, turning to the officer beside him. "Check missing persons reports, especially cases involving infants. And get me a trace on the name Wendeley. We need to find out who this woman really is." Ramirez nodded and hurried off. Crow looked back at Lucas. The boy was still standing there, gripping the baby protectively. He had just turned his mother in for murder. "You did the right thing coming here," Crow said quietly. "We're going to find her. And we're going to make sure you and Lily are safe." Lucas didn't answer. He just looked down at the baby in his arms and held her a little closer. Detective Jonathan Crow sat at his desk, the glow from his computer screen illuminating the deep lines of concern on his face. The station buzzed around him, phones ringing, officers murmuring in hushed voices, but he tuned it all out, focusing on the missing persons reports Ramirez had pulled up. There it was. Lillian Rayner. 6 months old. Reported missing 3 days ago. Her father, Henry Rayner, had also been reported missing, but there were no leads, no sign of either of them. Until now. Crow clenched his jaw. Lucas hadn't been lying. This was real. A man was dead, and his daughter had been stolen. Across the room, Lucas sat in a plastic chair, cradling Lily in his arms. His small frame looked even smaller against the large seat, and exhaustion was evident in the dark circles under his eyes. A female officer, Officer Daniels, had wrapped a warm blanket around him, but he still looked cold. Not just from the night air, but from everything he had seen. Crow walked over and crouched beside him. "Lucas, I need to ask you a few more questions, okay? I promise you're safe here." Lucas nodded weakly. "You said your mom planned to leave soon. Did she say where she was going? Lucas shook his head. No. Just that people were asking too many questions. She told me not to talk to anyone. That if anyone came looking for us, I had to lie. He hesitated, glancing down at the baby in his arms. But I couldn't do it this time. Crow felt something tighten in his chest. The kid had been trapped in a nightmare for years, forced to live under the rule of a woman capable of murder. And yet, despite everything, he had chosen to do the right thing. "You're brave, Lucas," Crow said quietly. "Braver than most adults I've met." Lucas didn't respond, just held Lily a little closer. At that moment, Ramirez returned, holding a file in her hands. "We've got a match," she said, her voice laced with urgency. "Henry Rayner's wife, Olivia Rayner, has been looking for her husband and baby since they disappeared. She reported them missing 3 days ago. We just contacted her. She's on her way." Lucas's head snapped up. "Lily's mom?" Ramirez nodded. "Yeah, kid. She's been searching for her baby this whole time." A flicker of relief crossed Lucas's face, but it was quickly overshadowed by something else, uncertainty. "What about my mom?" Crow exhaled. That was the real question. Where was Evelyn Wendeley? "We're working on finding her," he assured him. "But we need your help, Lucas. We need to know everything you can remember about her, any places she might go, anyone she might contact." Lucas hesitated, his fingers tightening around the blanket. "There was a man," he finally said. "She used to meet with him sometimes. His name was Deke. I don't know his last name, but he was scary. He had tattoos all over his arms and a snake on his neck. Mom said he could fix problems." Crow and Ramirez exchanged glances. That didn't sound good. If Evelyn had connections to someone like that, she wasn't just on the run, she was dangerous. "All right," Crow said, standing up. "We'll look into Deke. In the meantime, let's get you and Lily somewhere safe." Just as he spoke, the front doors of the station burst open. A woman stood in the doorway, her face pale, her hands shaking. Her eyes locked onto the baby in Lucas's arms, and she let out a choked sob. "Lily." Lucas barely had time to react before Olivia Rayner ran toward them, dropping to her knees in front of him. Tears streamed down her face as she reached out, hesitant, afraid this was all just a dream. Lucas looked at Crow, unsure of what to do. "It's okay," Crow said softly. "That's her mom." Swallowing hard, Lucas slowly loosened his grip, letting Olivia take her daughter into her arms. The woman cradled Lily against her chest, whispering words of love, of relief, of disbelief. Lucas watched, his expression unreadable. He had saved Lily, done the right thing. But as he sat there, watching a mother reunite with her child, one painful thought settled in his mind. Who was going to save him? Evelyn Wendeley knew something was wrong the moment she stepped into the house. The air inside felt different, too still, too empty. The floorboards creaked under her boots as she moved through the dimly lit living room, her sharp eyes darting around. The blankets she had left on the couch were gone. The baby's bottle was missing from the table. Lucas's old sneakers, the ones he always kicked off near the door, weren't there. Her pulse quickened. She hurried toward Lucas's bedroom and pushed the door open, her breath coming faster now. Empty. The sheets were rumpled, the closet door slightly ajar, but there was no sign of her son. Or the baby. A deep, unsettling chill crawled up her spine. Lucas was gone. And so was Lily. For a long moment, Evelyn just stood there, staring at the empty bed. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Had someone taken them? No, there was no sign of a struggle, no forced entry. Lucas had left on his own. And that meant only one thing. He had betrayed her. Her lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. Clever boy. She exhaled sharply, running a hand through her tangled hair. It wasn't over. She wasn't finished. Lucas thought he could run. That he could turn against her and get away with it. No. He was still her son. And she always took care of what was hers. With a deep breath, she turned on her heel and strode toward the kitchen. She yanked open a drawer and pulled out an old flip phone, one of the burner phones she kept for emergencies. Her fingers moved quickly as she scrolled through the contacts, stopping when she found the name she was looking for. Deke. She pressed the call button, tapping her fingers impatiently against the counter as the phone rang. A click. Eve, a low, gravelly voice greeted her. Didn't think I'd be hearing from you so soon. Evelyn's jaw tightened. I have a problem. A pause. Then a dark chuckle. Don't you always? She ignored the jab. My kid ran. Took the baby with him. Silence on the other end. Then, shit. Yeah. Evelyn's grip on the phone tightened. I need them found. Now. Deke exhaled, and she could hear the sound of a cigarette being lit. You sure about this? The kid, he's yours. Evelyn's voice turned to ice. He made his choice. Another pause. Then Deke sighed. All right. I'll put some guys on it. If they're still in the city, we'll find them. Evelyn closed her eyes, willing herself to stay calm. Lucas thought he could run to the cops. That he could turn her in, destroy everything she had built. He didn't understand. He never had. She had done everything for him. Kept him safe. Fed him. Given him a home when no one else would. And this was how he repaid her. Her fingers clenched into fists. Fine. If Lucas wanted to be against her, then he would learn the hard way. No one left Evelyn Wendeley. Not even her own son. Detective Jonathan Crow sat at his desk, flipping through the growing file on Evelyn Wendeley. What had started as a case of a missing baby and a frightened boy had spiraled into something far bigger. The pieces were finally starting to fit together, but the picture they formed was worse than he'd imagined. Evelyn wasn't just an abusive mother with a violent streak. She was a ghost. She had no official records before 12 years ago, no birth certificate, no medical history. Every address she had listed was temporary, every name she used connected to someone who had either disappeared or ended up dead. And now, she was on the run. Crow exhaled, rubbing his temples. They had checked the house where Lucas said the murder happened, but it was completely empty, wiped clean, like she had never been there. No body, no weapon, no evidence. She was smart. Dangerous. And still out there. His phone buzzed. He grabbed it, pressing it to his ear. Crow. We got something, Ramirez said. Security footage from a gas station 2 miles from the house. Wendeley was there last night. She bought supplies, food, bottled water, prepaid burner phones. Crow sat up straighter. She's preparing for a long run. That's what it looks like, Ramirez confirmed. But that's not all. She wasn't alone. A man was with her. Big guy, shaved head, tattoos all over his arms. And a snake inked on his neck. Crow's stomach twisted. Deke. Lucas had mentioned the name, his mother's fixer. If Evelyn was with him, things had just gotten worse. He stood up, grabbing his jacket. Send me the footage. I'm going to talk to Lucas. Lucas sat in the quiet corner of the station, wrapped in a borrowed hoodie that was too big for him. He hadn't said much since Olivia Rayner had arrived and taken Lily into her arms. He had just watched, silent, his expression unreadable. Crow pulled up a chair next to him. How you holding up, kid? Lucas shrugged. I don't know. Fair enough. Crow leaned forward. We think your mom is with Deke. Lucas flinched at the name but nodded. Yeah. That makes sense. You said he was dangerous. How dangerous are we talking? Lucas swallowed. I only met him a few times, but he scared me. He wasn't just some guy my mom knew. He was like a fixer, I guess. When we had problems, he made them disappear. Crow frowned. Problems? Lucas's fingers tightened in his lap. There was a woman once. She tried to call the police on my mom. She said she was going to get me out of there. He swallowed hard. A few days later, she was gone. Crow's stomach turned. Did you ever see him hurt anyone? Lucas hesitated. Not with my own eyes. But one time, when I was little, he came over in the middle of the night. His hands were covered in something dark. I thought it was paint. His voice dropped. But it wasn't. Crow exhaled, forcing his anger down. Evelyn had been raising her son in a world where people disappeared if they became a problem. And now, she saw him as the problem. Lucas looked up, his voice quieter now. She's going to come for me, isn't she? Crow didn't sugarcoat it. Yeah. She is. Lucas nodded, like he had already known the answer. Then what do we do? Crow thought for a moment. Evelyn was unpredictable, but she was also calculated. If she was on the run with Deke, she wouldn't just hide, she would regroup, plan her next move. And if she wanted Lucas back, there was only one way to lure her out. We make her come to us, Crow said. Lucas frowned. How? Crow met his gaze. We let her think she already won. Lucas sat in the dimly lit room of the safe house, his stomach twisting into knots. The old wooden floor creaked every time he shifted in his chair, and the faint hum of a street lamp outside buzzed through the silence. It had been less than 24 hours since Detective Crow told him the plan. They were going to lure Evelyn out, make her think she had the upper hand. And Lucas was the bait. He clenched his hands into fists, his fingernails digging into his palms. He had spent his whole life afraid of his mother, afraid of her anger, her unpredictability, the way she could switch from warmth to cold, from a loving smile to a deadly glare. But he wasn't that scared little boy anymore. He wouldn't run this time. The plan was simple: spread false information that Lucas had been placed in temporary foster care at a small group home on the outskirts of the city. Evelyn wouldn't be able to resist. She would come for him. And when she did, Crow and his team would be waiting. The only problem? Evelyn was always a step ahead. She found him faster than anyone expected. Lucas had barely settled into the group home's routine when it happened. It was just after midnight, and the other kids were asleep in their bunks. Lucas lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between the sounds of distant car horns outside. Then, the power cut out. Everything plunged into darkness. The humming air conditioner stopped, the dim glow from the hallway disappeared. The whole house fell into an eerie silence. Lucas's breath hitched. He sat up, his pulse hammering in his ears. His mind raced. Maybe it was just a power outage. Maybe. A soft creak came from downstairs. Lucas froze. She's here. He slipped out of bed, his bare feet touching the cold wooden floor. Moving as quietly as he could, he edged toward the door, listening. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. The front door hadn't been forced open, which meant she had a key. Lucas's chest tightened. How? How did she get in so easily? Then it hit him. Deke. He had connections, people who could be bought. Someone must have sold her the information, given her access. The plan was crumbling before it had even started. Lucas knew he had only seconds to act. He backed away, pressing himself against the wall, trying to steady his breathing. If she found him now, before Crow and his team got here, she would take him. And this time, he might never escape. A shadow moved outside his door. The knob twisted. Lucas's breath caught in his throat. Think. 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 He did the only thing he could. He ran. Darting across the room, he threw himself out of the window, landing hard in the bushes below. Pain shot up his arm, but he forced himself to move. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the sting of scraped skin, and sprinted toward the street. A black car sat parked at the curb. The driver's side door opened. Deke. Lucas barely had time to react before the man lunged, grabbing him by the hoodie and yanking him back. Not so fast, kid. Deke's voice was smooth, almost amused. His grip tightened. Your mama's been looking for you. Lucas struggled, kicking, twisting, but Deke was too strong. He dragged Lucas toward the car, reaching for the door handle. Then. Gunshots. The street exploded with flashing red and blue lights. Tires screeched as unmarked police vehicles swarmed the block. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Deke let out a furious curse and let go of Lucas, reaching for the gun tucked in his waistband. But Crow was faster. A single shot rang out. Deke dropped to the ground, clutching his leg, howling in pain. Lucas stumbled back, gasping, as officers rushed forward, forcing Deke onto his stomach and cuffing him. And then, above the chaos, a single voice cut through the night. Lucas. His blood ran cold. Evelyn stood in the shadows near the house, her wild eyes locked onto him. Even with officers surrounding her, even with guns pointed in her direction, she didn't look afraid. She looked furious. You did this to me. Her voice was calm, but there was something venomous beneath it. You betrayed me. Lucas didn't look away. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel small under her gaze. You did this to yourself, he said, his voice steady. Evelyn let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. They'll turn on you, you know. You think they care about you? You think they'll keep you safe? You're nothing to them. You're. Enough, Crow's voice cut through the air as he stepped forward, his gun still raised. Evelyn Wendeley, you're under arrest. She didn't resist. She just stood there, watching Lucas, as the officers grabbed her arms and forced her to the ground. Even as they cuffed her, even as they dragged her toward the police car, she never broke eye contact. And Lucas didn't either. Because for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of her anymore. Lucas sat in the police station, his hands wrapped around a cup of hot chocolate that had gone cold. The adrenaline was finally wearing off, leaving him exhausted. His whole body felt heavy, like he'd been running for hours. Because he had. Evelyn was gone. Arrested. Locked away in a holding cell somewhere in the back of the station, far from him. And yet, her words still echoed in his mind. You betrayed me. He stared down into the cup, his fingers tightening around the paper rim. He had done the right thing. He knew that. But a small part of him, one he hated, still felt guilty. Not because she deserved his loyalty, but because she was the only mother he had ever known. Now he had no one. A heavy chair scraped against the floor, pulling him from his thoughts. Detective Crow sat down across from him, setting a manila folder on the table. She won't hurt you again, Crow said, watching him carefully. Lucas nodded slowly, but he didn't feel any different. He should have felt relieved. Safe. But all he felt was lost. Crow sighed, leaning forward. Lucas, I need to ask you something. Lucas met his gaze. We've been digging into your past. Trying to figure out where you came from before Evelyn took you in. Crow tapped the folder. And I think we found something. Lucas's stomach twisted. He wasn't sure he wanted to know. Crow opened the file, flipping through papers until he found what he was looking for. He turned it around and slid it toward Lucas. A birth certificate. Lucas stared at it, his chest tightening. His name was printed in neat, black ink. Not Lucas Wendeley. Lucas Hale. And below that, two names he didn't recognize. Parents, David Hale and Rebecca Hale. His throat went dry. Who? Crow softened his voice. Your real parents, Lucas. He hesitated, then continued. You were reported missing when you were 3 years old. Taken from your home. Lucas's head spun. 3 years old. He tried to remember, tried to grasp at anything, any memory of the people whose names were on that paper. But there was nothing. Just fog. I don't, his voice cracked. I don't remember them. Crow nodded. That's okay. But they remember you. Lucas's breath hitched. They never stopped looking for you. Crow pulled out another sheet of paper. Your father, David Hale, is still alive. We contacted him. He's on his way here. Lucas's hands trembled. He had a father. A real father. For so long, he had believed he was alone. That Evelyn was the only person he had left in the world. But it had been a lie. Is he? Lucas swallowed hard. Is he a good person? Crow met his gaze. From everything we've learned. Yeah. He's a good man. Lucas didn't know what to say. A father. A family. A life that had been stolen from him. And now, it was coming back. Whether he was ready for it or not. Lucas sat in the quiet office, staring at the door. His heartbeat was so loud in his ears that he barely heard the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. He was waiting. For him. For his father. Crow had offered to stay in the room with him, but Lucas had said no. He needed to do this alone. He gripped the edge of his chair, his palms damp. His entire life, he had believed he had no one. That no one was looking for him, that no one cared. Now, in just a few hours, that had changed. The door handle turned. Lucas's breath caught. And then, a man stepped inside. He was tall, with dark brown hair flecked with gray at the temples. His face was lined with age, with grief, but his eyes, were the same shade as Lucas's. David Hale. His father. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other. Then, David took a shaky step forward, his hands trembling at his sides. His voice, when he spoke, was thick with emotion. Lucas. Lucas felt his throat tighten. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. So he just nodded. A choked breath escaped David's lips, and before Lucas could react, the man dropped to his knees in front of him, his shoulders shaking. I thought I lost you forever, David whispered, his voice breaking. I never stopped looking. He covered his mouth, struggling to hold back a sob. You're alive. Lucas's fingers clenched around the fabric of his jeans. His chest felt like it was caving in. He had never seen a grown man cry before, not like this. Not with this kind of raw, unfiltered pain. He should have felt awkward. Uncomfortable. But instead, something deep inside him cracked open. Because this was real. Not manipulation. Not a game. Not like Evelyn. This was love. David hesitated, then reached out, stopping just short of touching him. I know this is a lot. And I don't expect you to trust me overnight. But if you'll let me. I'd like to be in your life. Lucas's chest ached. His whole life, he had been told he was alone. That he had no one. That he was unwanted. It had all been a lie. He had been stolen. And now, he had a choice. A lump formed in his throat. He swallowed hard, then finally, let go of the breath he'd been holding. And in the smallest, quietest voice, he whispered. "Okay." David let out a broken laugh, his eyes glistening. "Yeah." Lucas nodded. And when his father hesitantly pulled him into a hug, Lucas didn't pull away. For the first time in his life, he felt safe. For the first time in his life, he was home. This story is about survival, resilience, and the power of choice. Lucas spent his entire life believing he was alone, manipulated into thinking that love was control and that fear was loyalty. But in the end, he made the hardest and bravest choice of all, to break free. What makes this story powerful isn't just that Lucas escaped Evelyn's grasp or that justice was served. It's that, despite everything, he found his way home. Not just to a place, but to a family. To people who truly cared about him, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. This isn't just a story about escaping the past. It's about rewriting the future. Lucas's journey proves that no matter how dark your beginnings are, no matter how much you've been told you don't belong, there is always hope. And sometimes, even after all the pain, you get a second chance. A real one.